I stood at the kitchen counter, watching Marcus pour his coffee with the same mechanical precision he'd used for 3 years. No steam rose from the cup. He preferred it lukewarm, like everything else between us. "Irene," he didn't look up. "I need to say something." I gripped the granite edge. His voice carried that flat tone I'd learned to dread, the one that preceded discussions about mortgage rates or whose turn it was to call the plumber. "We both know this isn't working." He finally met my eyes. "We're living like strangers." The words hung there, true, but hearing them felt like swallowing glass. "I've been thinking." He set down his cup with deliberate care. "If you want to explore other options, I won't stop you." Heat rushed to my face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying if you need to be with someone else, just let me know." His shoulder sagged, "So I can see." The kitchen felt smaller suddenly. See what? The truth, the real you. He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "I want to understand what I've been missing, what we've been missing." I stared at his profile. No anger, no jealousy, just exhaustion wearing the shape of my husband. "You're talking about recording it." "Yes." The word dropped like a stone. "A camera, so I can watch later, so we both know exactly what this is." My pulse hammered against my throat. "And then what?" "Then everything changes." He turned toward me, one way or another. I wanted to ask if he'd lost his mind. Instead, I found myself nodding, because maybe madness was exactly what we needed. 3 days passed before I could think clearly. Marcus moved through our routines like a ghost, present but untouchable. We ate dinner in silence, watched television from opposite ends of the couch, slept with our backs turned. On Thursday evening, I made the call. "Graham, it's Irene." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Could we meet for coffee tomorrow?" A pause. "Of course." "Everything all right?" Graham Holloway had worked with Marcus for 5 years, attended our dinner parties, sent Christmas cards. He was safe territory. Or so I'd told myself during those moments when his laugh lingered too long, when his hand brushed mine, reaching for the salt. We met at the cafe on Elm Street. He arrived first, already seated by the window when I walked in. Tall, graying at the temples, wearing that easy smile that had always made me look away too quickly. "You look troubled," he said, as I sat down. I wrapped my hands around my latte. "Marcus and I are having difficulties." His expression shifted, more careful now. "I'm sorry to hear that." He suggested something. The words felt foreign in my mouth. Something unconventional. Graham waited. "He wants me to be with someone else, while he watches." I met his eyes. "I thought of you." The silence stretched between us. Outside, cars passed in the late afternoon light. Normal people living normal lives. "Irene," his voice was gentle. "Are you sure about this?" No, I wasn't sure about anything anymore, but I nodded anyway. "When?" "Saturday. He'll set up the equipment beforehand." My cheeks burned. "Then leave us alone." Graham reached across the table, covered my hand with his. Warm, steady. "All right," he said quietly, "if that's what you need." Saturday arrived gray and cold. Marcus spent the morning in his study, emerging only to show me the small device mounted discreetly in the corner of our bedroom. Red light blinking, recording. "I'll be at my brother's," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Take as long as you need." The front door closed behind him with a soft click. I stood in the hallway, listening to his car pull away, feeling like an actress who'd forgotten her lines. Graham arrived at 2. He brought wine, a bottle of Merlot we'd shared at last year's Christmas party. The gesture felt both thoughtful and surreal. How are you holding up? He touched my shoulder lightly. I poured 2 glasses, my hands trembling slightly. I keep wondering if this is real. We sat on the couch, talked about work, the weather, anything but why he was here. The wine helped. By the 3rd glass, I could almost pretend this was normal. Irene, his voice was soft. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for. But I was ready. Ready to feel something besides the hollow ache that had become my marriage. Ready to remember what it felt like to be desired. I took his hand, led him upstairs. The device watched us from its corner perch, unblinking. I thought about Marcus, wherever he was, knowing he would see this later. See me as I really was, not his distant wife, but a woman capable of passion. What happened next belonged to shadows and whispered names, to the space between what we planned and what we discovered. The rest stays between us and the watching lens, a truth recorded but never spoken aloud. Afterward, we lay in the quiet. Graham traced patterns on my shoulder. The device continued its silent vigil. Will you be all right? He asked. I didn't know how to answer that. Graham left before Marcus returned. I changed the sheets, opened windows, erased the physical evidence. But something had shifted in the house itself, a weight in the air, heavy with what couldn't be undone. Marcus came home at 8. He moved through the kitchen, heating leftovers, not asking questions. We ate dinner with the television on. Background noise to fill the crater where conversation used to live. Did you... I started, then stopped. He looked at me across the table. Not yet. I'll watch it tomorrow. The next morning, I woke alone. Marcus's side of the bed was cold, untouched. I found him in his study, door closed. The sound of typing drifted through the wood, steady, methodical, like rainfall. I made coffee for 2, left his cup outside the door. It sat there until evening, growing cold. This pattern continued for days. Marcus emerged for meals, for work, for the basic mechanics of sharing space. But he moved like a man underwater, slow and deliberate, as if the air itself had thickened around him. I wanted to ask what he'd seen, what he'd learned, whether the truth had been worth the price. But his silence built walls I couldn't scale. On Wednesday, I found him standing in our bedroom, staring at the corner where the device had been. It was gone now, packed away with whatever secrets it had captured. Marcus, I stepped closer. Talk to me. He turned toward me, but his eyes looked through me, past me, to somewhere I couldn't follow. I got what I asked for, he said quietly. The truth. Then he walked past me, down the stairs, out the front door. I heard his car start, pull away. He didn't come home that night. The envelope arrived on Friday. Thick cream paper, my name written in Marcus's careful script. No return address needed. I recognized the law firm's letterhead through the window. I sat at the kitchen table, the papers spread before me like evidence at a crime scene. Divorce petition, asset division, custody arrangements for a marriage that had produced no children, only silence. Most of it was standard legal language, cold and precise, but tucked between the property schedules was a single sheet of personal stationery. Marcus's handwriting, blue ink on white paper. Irene, I watched the recording, all of it. You were right to choose Graham. He touched you the way I forgot how to. He made you laugh, made you alive again. I realized something while watching. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was relieved, because it meant I could finally stop pretending we were something we're not. You gave me what I asked for, the truth. And the truth is that we've been strangers for years, going through the motions of marriage without its heart. Thank you for reminding me why this needed to end. Marcus. I read it 3 times. Each time, the words hit differently. First with shock, then with understanding. Finally with something that felt almost like gratitude. He was right. We had been strangers. The camera hadn't revealed betrayal. It had revealed absence. The absence of connection, of desire, of any reason to keep fighting for something already dead. I folded the papers, set them aside. Outside, rain began to fall, washing the windows clean. I signed the papers on Monday morning. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old coffee, the kind of place where endings get processed with efficient courtesy. Marcus wasn't there. He'd already signed his copy, the secretary explained. Everything was in order. Walking to my car, I felt lighter somehow. Not happy exactly, but unburdened. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and could finally exhale. That evening, I packed the device away in a box with other remnants of our marriage. Wedding photos, anniversary cards, a silver frame that had held our engagement picture. Things that once meant everything, now just objects waiting for donation. As I wrapped the small recording device in tissue paper, I wondered if Marcus had kept a copy. If somewhere in his new apartment, our last act of intimacy lived on a hard drive, proof of what we'd lost and why. I thought about calling Graham. He'd left 2 messages since Saturday, gentle check-ins that I hadn't returned. But what would I say? That he'd been part of something larger than desire? Something that felt more like archaeology than adultery? Instead, I drove to the coast, sat on the rocks watching waves crash against the shore, feeling the salt spray on my face. The ocean didn't care about my choices, my marriage, my carefully constructed betrayal. It simply was, powerful and indifferent and true. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Papers received. Thank you for your honesty. I hope you find what you're looking for. I typed back, you too. Then I deleted his number, not from anger, but from kindness. Some truths are best left in the past, recorded once and then released to the waves. The camera had shown us exactly what we needed to see, not passion or betrayal, but the space where love used to live. And sometimes, seeing clearly is its own form of grace. The recording, what the camera saw, truth in motion, the arrangement, witnessed. Irene and Marcus have lived like strangers in their own marriage for years, sharing space but not intimacy, going through motions without meaning. When their relationship reaches its breaking point, Marcus makes an extraordinary proposal. If Irene needs to be with someone else, he wants to watch it happen through a camera, believing this will reveal the truth about what they've lost. Irene accepts, choosing Graham, her husband's acquaintance, with whom she's always shared an unspoken tension. The arranged encounter unfolds under the silent witness of the recording device. But what Marcus discovers when he reviews the footage isn't betrayal. It's the absence of any real connection between him and his wife. The camera had captured everything with clinical precision. Every hesitant touch, every forced smile, every moment where Irene's eyes drifted toward the lens as if seeking his permission or forgiveness. But what struck Marcus most profoundly wasn't the physical act itself. It was how utterly mechanical it all appeared. Graham moved through the motions with the enthusiasm of someone checking items off a grocery list, while Irene seemed to be performing a role in a play she'd never auditioned for. Marcus rewound the footage, watching again as his wife's hand briefly covered her face when she thought no one was looking. The gesture was so familiar, so achingly intimate, that it made his chest tighten. It was the same movement she made when overwhelmed at work, when the weight of pretending everything was fine became too much to bear. He'd expected to feel rage or vindication, or at least some confirmation of his worst fears. Instead, he felt a crushing sadness that seemed to settle in his bones. The experiment had succeeded in ways he'd never anticipated. It had shown him exactly how disconnected they'd become, how they'd both been going through the motions of a marriage that had died somewhere along the way without either of them acknowledging it. The next morning, Irene found him at the kitchen table, the camera sitting between them, like evidence at a trial. She looked exhausted, her hair still damp from what he assumed was a very long shower. "Did you watch it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded. "All of it." "And?" He studied her face, really looked at her for the first time in months. The fine lines around her eyes had deepened, and there was a weariness there that he recognized because he saw it in his own reflection every morning. "I saw two people who don't know how to love each other anymore," he said finally. Irene's shoulders sagged with what might have been relief. "Not just two people," she corrected gently. "4 people. We don't know how to love ourselves either." The admission hung between them, honest and terrible and somehow liberating. Marcus reached across the table, not for the camera, but for her hand. When their fingers touched, it was the first real contact they'd had in months. No performance, no audience, no hidden agenda. "So what do we do now?" he asked. Irene squeezed his hand, her eyes finally meeting his directly. "I think," she said slowly, "we learn how to be honest about what we actually want, starting with admitting that maybe it isn't this."